All right, welcome back to another episode of Tryp Rapport. I am officially living on an island, and it's been kind of a pain, but got everything set up to be able to record podcasts over the phone because there's so many people that I was hoping to link up with before I left and didn't have the opportunity to do so. I apologize for the poor audio of the last several episodes, but it was done kind of last minute trying to squeeze people in at some going away parties at the house. So there was doors banging in the background and children screaming and everything else, but I was able to squeeze a couple of people in, but I was really hoping to get Mhanu in. He came to the party, but it was just like too little time and too much to do, so we weren't able to sit down. But that being said, now that I'm up and running via phone, this, at least to me right now, sounds like much better quality than what I had before. So fingers crossed that we're good going forward. And so again, today I have Mhanu joining me to talk about his most recent experience to Peru with Heroic Hearts again. And the first one is still one of the most listened to podcasts so far. So I'm really stoked to hear how round 2 went for him. So with that, Mhanu, thanks for joining me again.
Yeah, man, thanks for having me, and thanks for being the first one doing it over the phone.
Yeah, thank you.
You know, I hope next time that we do this, I get to see you in person on the island.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, let's get into it. You went through the first time with Heroic Hearts, and then they brought you on. What is your official title with them now?
Currently, I'm an addiction and psycho-spiritual integration coach with the Heroic Heart Project.
Okay, cool. And how did that come about after your initial introduction with them?
We did my first podcast with you where I went to Peru, Peru with Heroic Heart Project to do my first ayahuasca experience. I sat in the jungle for a week, had a very profound experience, came back from that experience, really went through it. And my coach, Casey, at the time, he helped me through it. Jesse Gold, he even helped me through it. And just everybody else here in the United States, once I got back, was a big support. And once I seen how difficult of a time I had on my integration and so many questions that I had, I really wanted to give back to the community. I really wanted to give back to the veterans that are going through the same similar processes that I did. Mm-hmm. And I went to Peru the first time, you know, asking Creator for clarity and direction. Give me some clarity and direction in life. I've been helping veterans since I've been retired for about 8-9 years, and helping these guys out with getting disability ratings up and trying to get them 100% and getting them off the street and getting them off of drugs and that sort of thing. But it wasn't really filling my cup. Sometimes it backfired on me just because of the simple fact I get one of these veterans off the street and I get him, 100%, or I help him get 100%. And then that would just be the ultimate excuse for them not to be a productive member to society or themselves anymore. Now they just had a steady income to do drugs and alcohol and pay their rent and not have to work.
Yeah.
And so I really didn't like that part. And I thought, hey, you know what? I like to help veterans out with the mental clarity. Like if I can help them out with their mental clarity first, then everything else will be much easier. You know, they can establish their own benefits. They can make their own decisions in a much more effective way. And so I thought, hey, you know, these coaches that helped me out along the way, I really, really appreciated their help and what they did for me. And so I asked my coach, hey, how do I get into something that you're doing? And he said, hey, you know, why don't you reach back out to the organization and see if they can sponsor you to become a coach? And so I just jumped right on that ball right away, man. I reached out to Jesse Gold and I asked him if there was any room for me to become a coach and how that process would work out. And he said, yeah, I talked to my main man, Jared Reinhardt, and I hit up Jared, and Jared said, yeah, go sign up with the school, being true to you, and go get educated. And I didn't really do a lot of research, man. I thought it was just maybe a couple of classes, a couple week program or something like that. And by the time I was fully signed up and I got to talk to my school counselor, she was like, yeah, this is full on school for the next 6 months. And I got a master's degree in business, and I told myself after that, I'm never going back to college or full on school again. And here I am, man, full on back in school, 3 times a week, online stuff, group participation, and then having some coaching done on myself at the end of the week, because just the coaches, like we have to learn everything and go through it, and that can bring stuff up from our past and things that have been settling down inside of us. And so we get support groups and we get coaches, and I did that for 6 months, man, and then I finally graduated.
Awesome. So You have those credentials now, and then you get the invite to go back to Peru. And so this time you are coaching some people that are going, but you're also doing the medicine. Is that correct?
Yeah, man. So this is a little bit different. As soon as I got on board with Heroic Hearts, they asked me to jump on board and start a new program within the organization. What we done before was, like with the first time that I went down there, we had a representative from the organization. And it's not even called a representative. We just had, I guess you call it the liaison of the organization, meet everybody and take us out to dinner. And then he kind of called himself a facilitator at the time. And once we got to La Medicina, he wasn't a facilitator. Like, they had their own facilitators, and they said, look, you're either going to sit in your hut or you're going to just be a participant, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I got on with the organization said, hey, we want to develop a program and want you to be part of this with a handful of other coaches. And we want to develop a program that's like a liaison program that can eventually turn into, once you pass the liaison training, learn what to do with the veterans when they come there, where to take them, how to account for everybody, what to do in the case of an emergency, that kind of stuff, develop an SOP. Mm-hmm. And then we can develop that program into a representative position. So once you graduate, I guess, as a liaison, then we develop a part where it's a representative, so you can actually talk about the organization and reach out to other organizations for funding or anything else that we might need. And then have that turn into, from a representative training into facilitation training. Because the overall goal for a Heroic Hearts Project, as they told me, was they want to have their own facilities, their own facilitators, and just have everything in their own back pocket. So currently what they do right now is they outsource everything. So they use a travel agency, and they send us all down to either Mexico or Peru. Then they hire, La Medicina, which was part of Solterra, and they hire these guys, and they kind of just take over from there on out. So in the future, in their 10-year plan, they kind of want to have their own facility with their own facilitators and their own representatives, liaisons, and that sort of thing.
Right, because they can fine-tune this process, bring the cost down, and send more veterans through for the amount of funding they receive.
Exactly correct.
So was it La Medicina again? Was it the same spot you went to in Tarapoto this time around?
Yeah, man, it was exactly the same spots, the same head honcho down there, Vladimir. There was different facilitators there. They kind of, from the first time I went down there, we kind of noticed that they kind of cycled through facilitators, and still a very good friend of mine. He was one of the facilitators there. His name is Jude Lane. You can look him up on Spotify. He plays awesome medicine music. Yeah, they kind of cycle through facilitators, and we've always been told that Heroic Hearts, we cannot facilitate down there because they have their own facilitators, and they get paid for it. They live on the property and that sort of thing. So the really profound thing that happened with me this time was I really wanted to go back to Peru. And actually, I should back up. I should say the first time I went to Peru and I went through the week of sitting with Aya, I told myself, wow, what an experience. I feel like I got what I needed. I don't need to come back here for at least another 5, 10, or 15 years. I don't need to drink more ayahuasca. Like, I got what I needed. Mm-hmm. Because it was just such a profound experience,
Right.
And to the date exactly, I was asked by the organization to liaison a group of 11 veterans, 12 including myself, to go back out there and liaison. And I had said yes. And exactly to the day, 365 days later, I was back in Peru.
Wow.
At La Medicina, drinking more ayahuasca. And it just all happened. The universe just aligned it all right, just the way it was supposed to be.
Yeah.
And it's not something that I was seeking. It was not something I sought out. I feel like it was the medicine calling me back. Mm-hmm. And so, I definitely took up the opportunity. I did a couple of calls. I actually coached 2 of the participants that were in our group. It was kind of against the policy that we had written, or we had started to write, because we didn't think it was a good idea for the liaison to be coaching any of the participants at the current time, because they go through a pretty profound experience. You, as a liaison, you sit with the medicine as well. You might have to, deal with some of your own internal struggles through some of these ceremonies, and you don't want the participants that can also be your clients at the same time coming up to you the next day and bombarding you with all of their stuff while you're still trying to integrate your stuff. But yeah, I guess it was just kind of an emergency thing. I took on 2 clients and I coached them. So we did 3 preparation calls, before we went out there, and then 3 integration calls after we came back. And during and I want to do another little plug right here. There's a book written by a good friend of ours. He likes to stay anonymous, so he's going by the name of Joe Smuckatelli. Nice. And it's called, and the book is called Into the Ayahuasca, The Journey of a Navy SEAL. And I had read the book. Our buddy had asked if I wanted to read the book and give me his opinion. I thought it was an excellent book. It talks about integration. It talks a little bit about, the military experience, and it talks about preparation and the whole 9 yards. And so I read the book. I gave him my feedback, and then as soon as it became out and it came published, I recommended it to one of my clients, the client that went with me, and he got a lot out of it. So if you ever want to get ready, especially if you're a military member and you want to get ready for your first dose of ayahuasca and going somewhere else to do this, then I would definitely recommend this book, and it would really get your mindset ready for your journey.
Cool. Did this run the same way that it did last time? How many times did you sit throughout that week? And yeah,
everything was exactly the same.
Okay.
Yeah, everything was the same. I got to Peru, man, and I was the first one to get there, and that's usually the liaison's responsibility, the first one to get there. I got there, and I made sure I checked into the hotel, made sure I had the itineraries for everybody else, and within about a day and a half, the rest of the veterans all showed up. I took them out to dinner that night. I had the dieta dinner, so no red meat, no salt, no sugar, the whole 9 yards. Mm-hmm. And so we had a lot of good ceviche and a lot of good fish. And then the next morning, and then La Medicina showed up. Vladimir showed up in his truck, and another little pickup van showed up, and we loaded everybody up and, drove about 30 minutes out of the city into the jungle and got the La Medicina. Everybody got settled into their huts, and I got my own little private hut this time, so it was a little different. Usually you bunk up with another veteran. I got my own room this time, and so all the veterans were, there's a male and a female hut. And the first day was just preparation, kind of getting to know everybody. I already knew the process, so I was just there for support. And then, you got to meet the maestros and do your first flower bath of the day. And then you did lunch and dinner. And then the following morning, you had breakfast, yoga, flower bath, lunch, and then the first ceremony started. And so usually you do not eat anything after lunch. So it's about 7 hours or so until ceremony. So there's really not too much food in your stomach. That way you don't have too much to purge if you do. And also the medicine is able to really be absorbed into the body a lot better if there's less food in the stomach.
Yeah. So are these maestros the same as last time or new ones?
No, man. And I was a little bit bummed out about it. I've heard about these 2 other maestros, Jorge and Samira, and they were a little bit older cats, right? So I would say probably like in their 60s. Well, on my first time around, I had Gabriel and Tanya, and they were like in their 30s. And I had utmost respect for Tanya and Gabriel because, it's the first time I ever met, any maestros and done ceremony like that. And their voices were just immaculate. And I heard a couple of stories in the last year of some other people going to Soltara in Costa Rica and the medicine not being as good, and the maestros and the Icaros not being as good and powerful. Mm-hmm. So in my mind, I was already kind of defeated. Like, oh, wow, man, I got these 2 old fogies. This is not going to be as good as last year.
It's funny you say that, because my thought process would be these people have more wisdom and more education with the medicines. And I would be like, okay, cool. Let's see what they got that the 30-year-olds didn't have.
Yeah, the 30-year-olds, their voices were just so loud and crisp and, young and refreshing and rejuvenating. And I get to see these old fogies, and I'm like, oh, I'm thinking like I want to hear some old crackled voice, and
Yeah.
Boy, was I wrong, man. I was 100% wrong. I surprised myself. They surprised me, man. They were just as good as the first maestros that I met. They just blew my mind.
I'm actually doing an episode coming up here soon. I had talked about the guy who U.S. performed on Broadway who facilitated some of my ayahuasca ceremonies and blown away by his voice. But what they had all told me the last time I was in Joshua Tree with them was that when the medicine kicks in, it takes over your voice. It runs it for you. Yeah. Like it's not you in control anymore. And so I was like, hey man, I really want to sit down with you and just talk about like performing while under the medicine. He was like, hell yeah, let's do it. So I got that one coming up pretty soon, and I'm really interested to hear what he has to say about that as a facilitator that has channeled this medicine.
Oh yeah, man, I just got goosebumps hearing you say that, man. It just brings me right back because Samira, she's like a 60-some-year-old little tiny prune lady, it's just this little shriveled up lady, man. But like the minute that the medicine takes over and she starts singing, it's like the voice of an archangel, man, just being loud and like, wow, man. It's amazing, man, what they can do once they're under the medicine.
Hell yeah. So let's drop in. What did night one, how did that go for you?
So I was really taken back, man. About an hour before night one, Vladimir and this other guy named Jonathan, who was one of the facilitators, they come up to me and they said, hey, man, tonight we request that you don't take a full dose and kind of take 3/4 of a cup and help us facilitate. Mm-hmm. And I was just blown away, like, what the fuck, man? I'm supposed to be a participant. We're not supposed to interject and be facilitating, like, this is your guys' rule, right? But if you read the book Into the Ayahuasca by Joe Smuckatelli, it talks about there was a guy in there and he called him Thor, but he was like some big 300-pound guy, 6'4" or whatever, that just once the medicine hit him, he rampaged through the Maloka, which is the ceremonial space, and started ripping out screens, and like 3 people had to jump on him and had to subdue him, right? Mm-hmm. And so my group of people, we had a good 4 guys that were like 6-something and over 250 pounds.
Yeah.
And so they said, yeah, man, we've had some mishaps happen here before. And, Vladimir had his ribs broken before. And so, myself, I'm a 6-foot statue guy, I'm in good shape and I can take on a guy that's type of a statue. And so they asked me if I could, facilitate versus participate. And I was really like just annoyed by that. Yeah. I was really upset by it. Like, this is not what I came here for. This is not the intentions that I had. But the journey that I'm on in my life is I'm trying to help heal other people around me in my community. And I also like to, get better in what I'm doing. And so this is actually something that, the universe, the medicine just really lined up for me. Sitting with medicine before, all kinds of different types of medicine, like the Church of the People had taught me how to sit up during ceremony, right? And so I accepted the challenge and I drank 3/4 of a cup. I was able to sit up the entire duration during ceremony and just be aware, right? There was one little time where I felt like I kind of slipped into the medicine, and then when the maestra, when she came in front of me, started singing, she kind of just pulled me out of it. Mm-hmm. And so first ceremony, one of the guys who was actually my client, he really went through it, man. I mean, he was purging, he was breathing heavily, he was making a lot of noise. I can feel the energy from the other facilitators that like, oh man, this might be one of those guys that's going to rampage through the Maloka. Mm-hmm. But he was able to hold his own, and we had no mishaps or nothing like that. First night was really just an eye-opening experience for everybody there. There was only 2 other people besides myself that had tried ayahuasca, but not in the same setting, just in the United States, and completely different ceremony. And so the first night was a good night. And so the second night, I was asked by the staff if I wanted to go in a little deeper. Mm-hmm. And so I said, yeah, I wanted to. I took a full cup on the second night. And once again, a very profound experience, because in my mindset, I was thinking, okay, I'm going to resolve trauma and drama that I've experienced in my life. And none of that happened. It didn't happen the first night. It didn't happen the second night, or it didn't happen the third night. And I think there's a time when I even asked the facilitator after second ceremony, I asked him, hey, is there a time where you have resolved most of your drama or trauma? And he says, yeah, there's a time where, eventually, it doesn't mean that you'll never resolve trauma or drama again, or something can't come up. But there's a time where you cross over a border of, okay, now I'm done healing, and now I'm more working towards learning. And
I like that you say
yourself.
that, because that's kind of where I feel like I'm sitting right now. As I don't want to say that I'm this complete, healed human being, but I felt like when there was still some darkness stuck inside of me, that I kept feeling called back to the medicine over and over, knowing that there was still something there. And the last several times that I've gone in, I'll probably talk about it, but I just had a cyanesis experience, outdoor grown mushrooms last Sunday, and I didn't really necessarily feel called to go back in. And when I went in, it was a smooth, beautiful ride. And it was almost like I don't know, especially after, I feel like 5-MeO, I've said it a million times on here, seemed to be this like graduation experience. And then whenever I brought up the Ayahuasca, which was the only like real heavy experience I had after that, that message that I came through on Ayahuasca was like, hey, we're clearing out all that's left. Just let it happen. And since then, I kind of feel like life has just been chill. I actually started working for a Fireside Project, and I took a call the other night, and there was a guy who it's something I've heard many people say before, but he was just like, hey man, I just finished, a mushroom dose, and I'm wondering why I just feel sad. Like, am I not supposed to feel good afterwards? Like, I went into this because I have depression. I've had suicidal ideation in the past. And, now I'm even more bummed out because I tried to do this thing for my mental health, and I'm still feeling bummed. Like, what's the deal here? And it's tough to listen to that, because mention he had made, and I'm sure you've heard other people say this before, especially in the medicine realm, is that like, it's so beautiful on the other side. Why am I coming back to this life that's just full of suffering? And it's difficult to hear that when you hear somebody say like, oh, my day to day is just suffering. I hate it. I don't want to do it again. Because for me, like, I wake up in the morning, I'm like, hell yeah, what's today going to bring me? You know what I mean? Instead of like, it's a day of suffering. And maybe I don't know if I guess I've maybe had that experience on mushrooms many years ago, but I think that's what depression is that feeling of every day is just monotonous boredom. I don't have a reason to live. And I think you need to find that reason. And, which clearly, like you said, you're on this path now to facilitate helping others heal themselves. And I kind of feel like that's been my calling as well.
Yeah. And, I think what, similar with you, and correct me if I'm wrong, but we had to do all the work, man. We've done a lot of work. There's been times where I had ceremonies and I'm like, wow, I don't feel enlightened, and I like to tell my clients all the time, like, we have to walk through the valley of the shadow of death before we can reach the sunlight, and that goes from ceremonies to life, right? And so, a lot of my clients, are military members, and so they're really ramped up on their PTSD, the depression, their anxiety. And it's like, hey man, like, you went through all of this shit. You went through deployments, you went through war, and battles and stuff like that. And then you got out, and then you went through more of this shit, through drug addiction or alcohol or whatever the case may be. And now you're doing the work with this medicine, right? And now once you're able to really go within yourself and see what is holding you down, and you're able to release that, then you're able to finally walk through the sunshine, man, and you get to experience the beautiful things in life, right? It's like a roller coaster. Roller coaster's got to dip down first before it can come back up. And so, and it doesn't mean that, like, for the rest of your life, you're going to just live up in the rainbows and the butterflies and live in this positive life all the time. But it's life is like a roller coaster, man. It's got up, downs, inverts, flips, and it goes all kinds of different directions.
Mm-hmm.
But once you're really familiar with this type of work and the tools that you require, that you obtain throughout this type of work, and from the community and from the people that mentor or coach you, the dips are a lot less than what they were before, right? So I wake up most days just like, hell yeah, man, this life is beautiful, man. I'm positive, like I'm out there, I'm going to kick this world's ass, and I'm going to help the people around me that need help, and life is great, right? But once in a while I'll wake up and be like, fuck, I'm not feeling it today. But you know what, like I've gained so many tools throughout my experience that I'm like, hey, you know what, if I'm recognizing I'm not feeling this way, or I'm feeling this way currently, I'm not feeling that well, what can I do? Hey, I can do some breath work, I can do some yoga, some meditation, and if none of those things work, hey, maybe I'll call up Sean and say, hey, Sean, man, like, can we have a little talk today, or somebody else, right? And so those are considered my tools, man, and I got to utilize these tools, which I never had any of these tools before. Like the military definitely didn't instill these tools in me.
Right.
And then you get to the part where, what your drama was, what your trauma was from back in the day. And like being able to resolve this, or being able to live with this, and being able to find your center, now you can finally move on. So now when I went through these last journeys in Peru, it wasn't nothing scary. It wasn't nothing, oh my God, like, what am I resolving here? It was like, wow, I'm actually learning things here. Like, this is actually beautiful, man. Like, I had an amazing time down there. And,
so what were some of the messages you brought out? What did you learn this time?
Oh man, on my second journey, right, the medicine hit me, and I'm going through it. And anybody that's ever done DMT or ayahuasca, similar, you kind of go through what I like to call a wormhole, right? Once the medicine hits you, you're going through this wormhole so you can kind of get to the other side. While you're going through this wormhole, you get to see all kinds of lights and shapes and colors and dimensions, and you really don't even know what to make of it. Like you can't even label it really, but it can get pretty intense once in a while, right? Mm-hmm. And boom, all of a sudden I get a message, man, and it just says, hey, you can freeze time, right? You can freeze all this. You can freeze time, man. Just do it in your head, freeze it. And I just did it. And I said, okay, let's freeze everything. And I was just stuck in like a frozen dimension, or in the dimension that I don't know, a realm that I can't, label. Mm-hmm. But all the shapes, color, size, and everything that was just swooshing around, it just stopped. And I was actually to like really just wander through there and touch things and kind of just really just take a 360 and look around. And I was like, wow. And then I said, okay, unfreeze it. And I was going right back through it. I was traveling back through it. And my whole time through the second ceremony, I was able to do that. So anytime that it got a little hectic, I would just say freeze in my own head. I mean, I wouldn't say it out loud. I would just say freeze it up. And I'd freeze up, and then I'd be like, all right. And then, kind of gather myself and then go back through it. And I want to take that message back with me into reality, because you know what? When everything gets so overwhelming in life, freeze it, man. Just stop what you're doing, stop everything and just, like, you might be going through the divorce and you're losing your kids and you just lost your job and your dog died and all this and that, right? So things can just be super hectic in your life and going a million miles an hour in your head. Just freeze everything. Stop thinking about all of that stuff and just get back into yourself, right? And you can do that by breathing, man. You can do that by meditating, doing some breath work. And so everything in life, you can just freeze it, man. And since Peru, man, I've been able to do this in my own mind. Like if I wanted to do it right now, I could kind of just stop everything in my mind, but I probably would stop talking too. And I would just kind of just freeze everything, man, because nothing really matters in this life, Matter doesn't matter, right? Like what really matters is who we are on the inside. It doesn't matter how much money I have or what kind of car I drive or what kind of luxury items I have in my house, right? Like none of that stuff really matters. What really matters is what's inside of you, who you are, where you're going, and what you're doing. right? And that's one of the biggest messages that I got from the second ceremony. And I went through a couple of other ceremonies several months ago prior to going to Peru. And I feel like when medicine hits me, my body wants to move, which is really different. Like at the Church of the People, I was always taught to kind of just sit there as a statue and just kind of just sit there, right? Mm-hmm. But I have kind of shied away from that and just like get my body to move, man. And it feels so much better. And I feel like it's almost generating some kind of electric energy, man, that once your body starts moving. You know,
yeah, let's elaborate on that for a second, because did you hear the episode I just recorded with Colin about him separating from the church?
Yes. Yeah,
okay, because that sparked a lot of controversy, as I expected that it would. But one of the things he brought up was, you know, when you put somebody on a high dose of medicine like that, you need to let the body do what the body needs to do, with being respectful of your own and the safety of others. But you know, that's how I feel, and I'm curious, you know, having been through both sides of it, it sounds like you would agree that sitting there like a statue is not necessarily the best way to navigate that space. To like, essentially, it seems like they're fighting the medicine rather than allowing it to do in the body what it needs to do.
Right. You know, I have my own opinions about the church. I have nothing real negative to say. I've learned from them. I'm forever grateful, but my values don't line up with theirs anymore, and that's why I had to resign from them. Mm-hmm. But yeah, one of the things is like you should be able to let the medicine do its work. You should be able to, you know, if you need to get up and move, you need to get up and move. Like, don't jump in the fire, of course, but you need to be able, like, if you want to dance, go ahead and dance. Exactly. That's what the body is telling you to do. And so the same thing in the Molucca, you're not really going to be able to get up out of your seat and kind of prance around the whole area, but you can sit in your designated spot and do whatever the hell you feel like your body needs to do.
Yeah.
And my first time sitting in the jungle out there in Peru, once the medicine hit my body would become like a slinky. It would kind of just... only for a couple of minutes, uncontrollable, arms flinging around, I'd be on my back, kind of like a beach whale. And yeah, I just kind of hit myself in my face, my hands, and then my arms would just flop on and next to me. And then, you know, like about 5 minutes later, like I would have that out of my system. And then I would be in my full on journey. And then towards the end of the ceremony, it's like when I'm coming back through that wormhole, my body would do that again. And you can do that in your own little spot right there. And if you try to fight that, then I think you make it a lot harder on yourself. And,
yeah,
you know, the same thing with psilocybin.
Yeah, I look at it from the standpoint of, you know, a massage therapist, and the book, The Body Keeps the Score. And there's a lot of quote unquote research into trauma storing itself in the body. And I think that these various movements, whether it's dancing or tremoring or whatever type of movement is required to come out, that comes involuntarily from plant medicine experiences, where, you know, I've said before, sometimes it looks like dancing, sometimes it looks like an exorcism, but I believe that it's that stored trauma in the body forcing itself out and letting itself go. And that's, at least from observation and from what I've gone through myself, and when I've been in those tremors, and the messages that I got were, hey, let it out. This has to go. Get rid of it. And so that's where I would not want to say, like, be that stoic person fighting from, you know, holding it in still, because I think you're not getting the full experience if you keep it locked up in the body.
Well, and in my work, we call it purging. Right.
Exactly.
You know, you can purge a million different ways, you know, shitting, laughing, pissing yourself, or like let the body, like you said, have the tremors, like shake it out.
Yeah.
And on my second and third, actually, the first time I went to Peru, I kind of did this too. I felt like the first time I went to Peru, one of the maestros, he kind of unlocked the rhythm that I have with inside of me. I'm a white boy, man, and I've always, I don't really dance well. I've never really danced well my whole life. You know, I'm kind of always been that wallflower, too embarrassed to really get off the wall, or, you know, I'm kind of just the observer, right? And I've always just used the excuse of like, hey, I'm a white boy and white boys don't have rhythm. And last year in Peru, that was really unlocked. I felt like the Icaros just got to me, and I was having the best concert of my life, man. My body was moving, my hands, my arms are moving to to the beat and the rhythm of the Icaros. And over the last year or so, man, when I've done some ceremonies, I've let my body do these things. And if there's music or there's this kind of Icaros going on, my body wants to move with it, man. And it wants to move to the rhythm, man. And it's beautiful. And I feel like I'm also generating some kind of energetic, just energy that's coming out there. And that's transferable as well throughout the ceremonial space.
Yeah.
And so on my second and third night over this last time in Peru, I started doing the same thing, and I could feel that the maestros could feel that energy, and it was welcomed. And so, man, I was a sweaty mess by the time the ceremony was over with. I never sat still, and my body was just doing all kinds of different things. And most of the time from, a seated position, out of respect of the ceremony and everybody was there. I didn't want to like stand up and just be this towering guy over everybody else since everybody else is sitting.
Yeah.
But yeah, on my third ceremony, actually, let me back up. So another message that I got is that on the second ceremony, the facilitator showed up halfway through ceremony with another cup of medicine in his hands. And he came next to me, and I'm pretty well going through it. I'm on a pretty good journey. And he offers me another cup of medicine, and he says, hey, brother, here you go. Because they can see now we're about halfway done with second ceremony. Nobody is going to, thrash around the Molucca and start shit with anybody. And
right.
And so they're like, hey, we can offer him some medicine. But I the cup of medicine that I already taken in the beginning of the night was plentiful for me. Mm-hmm. And my whole life, man, I've been this kind of individual. It's like more is better, right? More is better. And that's why I've been a crack addict and an alcoholic and a cocaine addict and an opioid user, right? Like I was all of those things in my life because I never knew when to say no. Mm-hmm. And I always just wanted more. So he came up with this second cup of medicine, man. And he says, hey, brother, you want more medicine? And I was able to look at him with a big old smile, and even got goosebumps just talking about it right now. And I said, no, brother, I'm good, but thank you. I appreciate you. Yeah. And he kind of like looked up like, whoa, what? And he had to go and take the medicine back. And I had this overwhelming just feeling inside of me that, wow, yes, I was able to finally in my life was able to say no to something and know my limits. And it was, man, I was super proud of myself. And
that's beautiful.
And just knowing what your limits are, man. And more is not always better, especially not with ayahuasca or any kind of plant medicine as far as that goes.
Right.
And so, that was the great experience of the second night. So I learned how to freeze time. I learned how to say no and know my limits. And then we had Arcana, right? Which Arcana is the last ceremony. It's like the closing ceremony. It's where we're going to round everything off and close everything up. And, on this ceremony, I was just nothing but positive energy. I was moving around. And if you ever meet me physically, you'll see that most, 90% of the time I got a smile on my face, and it's a true, genuine smile. And so here I am in ceremony, and I'm feeling good, and I'm moving my body, and I'm really loving the Icaros. And then the last maestra, Samira, comes in front of me, and I kind of had a fake smile on my face, and I remember it was a fake smile, a little bit of a fake smile. I was just trying to show her that like I'm really having a good time. I'm really enjoying myself. Mm-hmm. And she started singing, and man, she was able to see right through that smile, and just my smile turned upside down into just bawling my eyes out, man. Like she knew that there was something inside of me that still kind of needed to come out. And I wouldn't be able to tell you what it is.
Okay.
There was no specific memories or trauma or drama that came up, but she was able to pull something from deep down inside of my core out, man. And I sobbed so much. Like I was actually wondering when I was going to stop crying, man, because I couldn't, uncontrollable crying. I mean, I had gallons of tears and snot coming out of my nose, and every time that I would breathe in and I would try to center myself and say, okay, Mhanu, that's enough crying, I would just go even more. And she would just, her Icaros would get louder and louder, and halfway through, she even drank the Ruta and spit it all over me, and she kept singing. And So they know there's something, like they can see it on your aura. They can see your energy. They can see if there's still something stuck inside of you.
Yeah.
And she was able to pull it out, man. And the second time she drank that Florida water or Ruta, which one it was, and she spit it on me, I was able to take a deep breath, and all the crying just stopped. And I felt that positive energy coming back into me. And I need to back up a little bit. After first ceremony, the second day, you get to talk to the maestros and let them know what your experience was. Mm-hmm. They won't answer any of your questions, but they want to hear your experience. That way, they're able to adjust their icaros for the second and the third night.
Right.
It needed to be. And so I had told him, like, hey, I'm going through a divorce, and, you know, both my ex-wives, you know, they're really bugging me, you know, and I feel like those are my triggers, and I know my triggers are within inside of myself, but, you know, maybe you guys can do something to pull something that out. And the maestros just kind of looked at me, and they said, stop with your bullshit. Like, you know, the whole triggers and ex-wives and all that, let that shit roll off your back. Let that roll off your back. Yeah. What is your real purpose? And I said, well, my real purpose is I want to be similar like you guys. I want to help, assist, and heal people with every way that I can. Mm-hmm. And they said, that's why you're here. And we got something special for you. Oh, and I said, well, I don't know what does that mean? and so on the third night, man, Jorge, he's saying to me, man, and yeah, he was just instilling something in me, man. And before you know it, he's taking that Florida water and he's blessing every part of my body, man. I mean, most of the time they would take 1, 2, 3 drinks and like just spit it kind of on your crown chakra, kind of like in your face, maybe a little bit on your back. But I mean, he got me on every part of my body, man. He rubbed this shit all over me, man. And by the time he got done, I felt so different, and he just started smiling and laughing at me. And like, not like laughing at me, but just like giggling, like I gave you something, you know, and like, this is what you came for. And oh, it was so beautiful, man. And so I've taken that back and cherished it and used it. And so that's just a little bit about me. But since I've been telling this story, completely forgot about some of the craziest, almost exorcism kind of stuff that I've seen happening on some of these other participants.
I'm glad you're going here because I was just about to bring it up, so roll with it.
Yeah, man, this was wow, man. And I forgot the terminology of it, so I'm just going to use my own words. But there was 2 individuals there, 2 ladies there. One lady, she, both veterans. One lady, she went through it. I guess, she had like miscarriages and failed marriages, and she was an alcoholic, man. And she had a lot of other trauma and drama in her life, pre and post military, and never resolved any of this trauma, right? It just always just kept it in, and just drank a lot just to suppress it, and played a lot of video games, just distraction after distraction.
Right.
But she physically was feeling like she had a ball of stress in her neck, right? Just like a bowling ball size knot in her neck. And it was actually starting to affect her a lot. And then I guess that's where she was storing all her drama and trauma, right? So the body, like, it stores it in different places. A lot of people say like in the hips and stuff like that, and, in the shoulders, but hers was definitely on one side of her shoulder, man. And after the first ceremony, so on the second day when she gets to go talk to the maestros, she kind of like went in there and just told them everything, right? And usually the maestros, they will not put their hands on you unless you give them permission. And so during the little talk on the second day, they asked her, hey, we can see there's something inside of you and we need to put our hands on you to get it out. Do you give us permission tonight to touch you in ceremony? And she said, fuck yeah, please do so. Like, I can feel like there's something that just needs to come out of me. And the second girl, she went to Machu Picchu, Peru, about 2 years prior. And when she was walking around there, she had taken one of the rocks from there. And when you take something from anywhere, it doesn't matter really if it's a sacred site or not, if it's from nature or from somebody's home without asking for permission, you're going to pay the consequences for that. And if you listen to my first podcast with you, I try to take a piece of ayahuasca vine and some chacruna leaves with me, and I paid the consequence for that. I got to see some really crazy, scary things, man, that I couldn't explain, and it all stopped when I put it back. Well, this girl, she went to Machu Picchu and she took a rock and never asked for permission and never said nothing to nobody. Came home with this and started having horrible stomach issues to the point where she's going to see doctors and this and that. And they just diagnosed her with IBS, right? Irritable bowel syndrome. You know, they can't really specify what, where, or how to diagnose it. They know how to suppress it, but that's about it. So once again, on the second day, when she was telling the maestros all of this stuff, the maestro said the same thing. Hey, can we put our hands on you? And she says, yeah, please do so. In ceremony that night, one of the girls was sitting 2 spots over from me on the left, and the other girl was sitting 2 spots over on the right. So I had a pretty clear vision. And not only that, one of the most awesome things was really profound. It was this full moon. So we had ceremony on the full moon. And so it got pretty light in the Maloca where you were able to see a lot. So the maestra, Samira, she comes up to the girl on the left of me, the one that had that ball in her neck. And she just started singing there. And this girl just started bawling, man. I mean, she started crying uncontrollably, making a hell of a lot of noise, crying. Everybody's kind of looking at her like, oh my God. And so while she was crying, Samira put a bunch of this Florida water in her mouth and went up to her neck and moved her neck over and just started slurping on her neck, man. Just started slurping and slurping. And you can hear it like she's slurping, like she's sucking on a Slurpee. And she has a purging bucket next to her. As soon as she's done slurping, she reaches over to the bucket and Samira just starts vomiting, man. Just starts just throwing up, man, purging and purging into this bucket. And then she drinks more of this Ruta water or Florida water and just starts sucking on this girl's neck more and more and more. And then as soon as she's done, dude, she purges more into this bucket, man. And so in terms of this happening, man, is the maestra, she's using her own body to pull anything negative and evil out of this girl's body and putting it in her own body and then turning around and throwing it up and putting it all into a bucket.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
That is like just mind-boggling. Like, I don't know a whole lot of people that would, in terms, if you don't want to talk about the spirituality shit, it's like shitting, hey, shit in my hand so I can take it and put it in the toilet for it, right? Like,
Yeah.
you know, it's like, wow, man. And she's using her own body, you know, like, I mean, but this is what she's trained to do. This is what she does day in, day out, you know, and it's,
I mean, there really is magic in the jungle. You know what I mean? Imagine,
100%.
Imagine if you walked into a doctor's office and they were like, all right, let me get in that neck and suck this thing out. And then you watch them vomit into a bucket. But it's like, well, I mean, continue. Like, how did the girl do the next day? Both of them, yeah.
So the next day, man, this girl is walking around like she's walking on feathers.
Yeah.
Like she has a smile on her face, man, and she had put her hair up, man. And I go up from behind her. Well, she's kind of showing everybody. This looked like the meanest, nastiest hickey I've ever seen in my life, dude.
Yeah.
It looked like she got hit in that back of the head with a fucking baseball bat, man. It was bruised, purple, pink, I mean, black, dude. It was huge. But, I mean, this girl felt a million times better.
Yeah.
And then moving on to the next girl, man, on ceremony number 2, they didn't put their hands on her, I don't think, on ceremony number 2. They performed a lot of the Ikaros on her, and after ceremony number 2, the girl was walking around like she had surgery. She was walking around bent over with her hand on her stomach. She could barely walk that day. I thought, like, hey, let me help her out a little bit, and I put my hand on her shoulder and I kind of on her back and say, hey, straighten out your back a little bit. And she said, don't touch me. I just went through surgery. Like, she actually like she physically went through surgery. I mean, she physically had nothing, like no knives were put on her or nothing like that, but she was acting and walking around like she had surgery. And then the third night, that's when Jorge went up to her, and I guess he had lifted up her shirt and done the same kind of ritual where he just had sucked on her stomach and then purged over into the bucket. And the next day, she walked around like she was on feathers, man. Like she walked around like her IBS was gone. She didn't have 1 inch of pain. She didn't feel anything. She felt great. And so, yeah, man, these healers really perform some magical things that you cannot, I mean, you can't put labels on this, man. I mean, we try in society, right? And like mainstream society would say that's an exorcism, you know? But wow, man, like just getting to see that with my own eyes was so profound, man. It was like I had such a high respect for these individuals that they dedicate their lives to do this to people they don't even know.
Right.
You know, and it's wow, man. And it really shows you that like these energies that are around us, this negative energy and positive energy, it's a real thing, man. It's not just something that we just, you know, come up with. It's something that's really out there.
Yeah, I was so stoked when we talked at the last Walk and Talk and you brought that up because I had heard about that in a podcast years ago. I couldn't even tell you which one it was. And I was like, this sounds crazy, but it's so interesting because the girl was talking about the suction and all that and seeing miraculous healing after. And so when you said that, I was like, okay, I didn't know what lineage that was. I didn't know if it was Shipibo. I didn't know where this came from, but it's so cool to that you, somebody I know, has witnessed it firsthand and seen the benefits of it.
Yeah, man. You know, it's spiritual surgery.
Yeah.
You know, that's the best way to put it, man. And you know, once again, I just want to reiterate, man, the respect that I developed for these maestros, you know, and how wrong I was about, you know, these two old maestros, you know, and Jorge doesn't even have that much experience. Yeah. You know, he's only been a maestro for 6 years.
Yeah.
You know, but one of the other messages that I got from there is, I mean, the ceremony lasted way longer, I feel like, this time around than it did last year. And you can tell halfway through ceremonies, you can tell that the medicine is kind of starting to wear off from the maestros, and they're getting a little tired, right? Like once in a while they were yawning throughout the Icaros, but they never stop, dude. And it's like, they march on, man. They keep going and going and going until the very last, you know, person is taken care of, you know, and sometimes they'll go a little bit after that too, you know, and these people, man, I mean, you know, they're twice our age, you know, twice the age of anybody else in that Maloka, man.
Yeah.
And they can, not only can they sit up all night on this medicine, but being this link between a higher power and the person in front of them that needs, you know, this healing. And just the Icaros, man, it's like they can sing it nonstop. And then once in a while, it's like you don't even hear them take a breath, you know? And it's like, how do you do this? Man, you're 60 some odd years old. Like, you know, I know people in their 20s that can't even sing like this, you know? And that's kind of like how we talked about earlier, you know, a couple minutes ago about they just become this instrument of a higher power.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was a very good time getting to experience this. I definitely surprised myself by my way of thinking that, you know, I'm not going to have a good experience like I did last year. And it just taught myself to just never get comfortable, you know, never think that anything is going to be the same, because nothing is ever going to be twice the same.
Exactly.
You know?
You can't prepare for it because you don't know what's coming. Yeah.
Exactly. You know, you can try to prepare yourself as much as you can, man, but the medicine is going to take its toll on you however it needs to.
Yeah. Well, we're like right at an hour there. I feel like that's a perfect way to wrap it up. This is a great one. Again, thanks for joining me. This is awesome. I can't wait. I got to make sure I'm still on the active list for Heroic Hearts because I can't wait to get down to the jungle with you and do this.
Oh, yeah. Same here, brother.
All right. Love you, man.
All right. Bye.